Okay, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started with some introductions here. So if people are joining as we introduce everything, not a problem. We just want to welcome you to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Molly Cook and I'm joined with my colleague Sarah Blaylock from the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And we'll be on here today to help with any questions that come up with technology and moderation. Today, we're going to be learning about corporate culture from some great panelists. As a reminder, all participants on this call are in listen-only mode and cannot unmute themselves. So if you have a question as the webinar proceeds, we ask that you hold your questions till about the last 30 minutes, and then we'll have time for audience questions. At that time, you can raise your hand and we can take you off mute, or you can put your question in the chat box. Additionally, if you think of a question as we're proceeding and you don't want to forget, just put it in the chat and we'll bring it up in the last 30 minutes again. Just a reminder that this webinar is recorded and the recording and materials presented will be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy website and Illinois WorkNet within 48 hours. Sarah also has a link to the presentation slides if you like to follow along as we go, and she'll be putting a link to those in the chat box. In an effort to be as accessible as possible, the webinar will be offering closed captioning and live transcription. So go ahead and turn those on using your Zoom toolbar if you wish. Tomorrow, you'll be receiving a follow-up email, which will include a survey asking you about the webinar. So please provide any feedback or suggestions you have, and this really helps us to improve any upcoming webinars. We'll also have a link for that at the end of today. So if you want to complete it while it's fresh in your mind, you'll have the opportunity to do so. So with that, I'm actually going to advance slides and we are going to start with just 2 poll questions, how we start all of our Wednesday webinars. The first poll question is, where is your local area? And I am going to be pulling that up right now. So you should be able to see on your screen, actually it looks like both questions launched. So you should see the first question of where is your local area? And then the second question of which partner do you best represent? And we'll give you about 30 seconds to answer these and then share the results so we can see who is all in the room today. And this is great. It looks like we have a pretty big group of participants today. So we already have 31 total of us here. So that's great. We're so glad you're all here. Okay, so about 10 more seconds if you can put your answers in the poll, and then I'll show all of those. Okay, so it looks like we have great statewide representation from Chicago to Southern Illinois. So that is great. And then we have various titles represented in addition to other WIOA partners and state and local workforce innovation board members. So welcome to all, so glad to have you. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David Frieden to get us going.
Great, thanks, Molly. And I'll add my thanks to Molly for all of you for joining us here today. Really looking forward to this conversation. I am Dave Friedman. I am the founder of Autonomy Works, and I'm also the chair of this the work group that's sponsoring this today. We are a work group under the IWIB, the Career Pathways for Targeted Populations group, which has 3 work groups as part of it. One focused on returning citizens, second on opportunity youth, and we here are part of the disability work group, focused on opportunities for people with disabilities to find employment. Our real focus here as a work group has been on identifying barriers that are getting in the way of this, both the hiring, but also the long-term success of people with disabilities as they move into jobs with different organizations. We have a group of people that come from across the state, that come across the different organizations, as well as community organizations and businesses looking at this issue. And last fall, we ran a webinar, and as we started to look at what we wanted to do this year, our intent had been just to run one webinar as a group. But we got into a conversation about all of the different barriers and all of the different things that we thought were interesting to talk about. And after a bit of time trying to jam those all into one webinar, we decided that we actually had 3 webinars that worth of content. So this is actually the first in a series of 3 webinars. Corporate culture, we're going to talk today about corporate culture and both the barriers that corporate culture can present to the hiring and success of people with disabilities, but also the kinds of changes and the kinds of changes, I guess, changes that companies need to make in order to create a culture that both welcomes people with disabilities into the organization, but also helps support them and make them successful long-term. Then coming up in May, we're going to talk about accommodations and universal design. So the concept that design for people with disabilities is actually designed for people, and that a lot of the same kinds of design changes and accommodations that you might make to make people with disabilities successful also make everybody successful. And we're going to talk about that concept and then about some examples of different accommodations. And then our last webinar will be in July, and there we're going to bring in a number of community providers to talk about how the types of individualized supports that are available for people, and then the types of organizations that exist around the state to support people directly as they are looking to transition into jobs. So today, going back to the corporate culture, today we're really fortunate to have 3 great presenters who I think are all going to bring slightly different perspectives on the topic to us today. What we're going to do is we're going to give each panelist 10 minutes or so to talk a little bit more about what they do, what their organization does, and some insights they have on the topic of culture. Then we have some structured questions that the panelists already know, so they'll be able to give concise and fascinating responses to those. And then we do want to open up to questions to make sure that any of you that have questions or thoughts to share have the opportunity to participate as well. So look, something like a half hour for the first piece, about a half hour for the second piece, and then as long as it takes for the audience questions. So the first panelist is James Emmett, and James is actually one of the first people I met when I was starting my work at looking at the employment of people with disabilities in as we started to found Autonomy Works. And he's really one of the, I think, original people that created this, some of the concepts around here, most notably the work that he's done with Walgreens in sort of building their system that they have now rolled out across the country, but taking everything that he learned there and now applying that at many, many other companies. So James is going to bring a perspective of someone who's helping to design and create change in organizations, and a perspective from lots of different companies about what they have run into and what the challenges are that they faced and how James and his team have helped overcome those. Pat Mayer, also another person I met very early on in my journey on this topic, is the Director of Civic Engagement for SPR. And he's been involved in space also for 20 plus years. And I think helping SPR, a single company, really reshape their culture over many years to be inclusive, not just for people with disabilities, but also for all people. And I think brings a great perspective on how a culture can evolve intentionally over time. And I'm interested to hear his perspectives on that as well. And the last panelist is Carrie Pesey. I guess I've also known Carrie for a long time. Carrie's my partner at Autonomy Works and has been a big part of building what we have built here. She is responsible for talent and operations and has really been the core of building the culture at Autonomy Works that has enabled us to build up to now 70 people in a couple of locations, most of them with disabilities. So thank you all again, all the panelists, for participating. I think you guys will all find them to be really interesting and to bring different perspectives, both from multiple companies, from a long journey at a single company, as well as starting a company from scratch. So as we mentioned, we're going to have short presentations from each of the panelists. And James, if you could kick us off, that would be great.
Yeah, Dave, thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you and be here with this great panel, who I've known for a while as well. So, so just a little bit about JEC, or James Emmett and Company. We founded, as Dave said, I've had the honor. I am a person who was born without a left hand, so I have a physical disability. I have two older daughters who have cognitive disabilities. So disability is a very personal issue to me, but it's also been my career since I was 18 years old at the University of Wisconsin. I started as a job coach for individuals with autism part-time as I was going through my degree, and switched to rehabilitation psychology and have never, as a major, and really have never looked back. And so I've had the fortune of working with many great nonprofits. I see that we had a lot of people from vocational rehabilitation on here, have my degree in rehabilitation counseling. But back, as Dave described, back in 2004, I met a gentleman named Randy Lewis, who most of you know was the founder of the visionary behind the Walgreens initiative that has hired, thousands of people with disabilities now. But also, I would argue Randy is almost defined now as the father of disability inclusion as a whole, right? He was the first person to say, from a corporate perspective, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this in terms of hiring people with disabilities and do it at scale. He was the first person to do that. So I had the honor of working under Randy, helping to implement his vision, which then I was able to roll into my experience with other companies. And so there's a list of them: Pepsi, UPS, Mercy Health, in the past, Best Buy. My company currently works with Advanced Auto Parts. And we have, JEC has evolved from a company of consultants who would work with corporations to more of what we would describe ourselves now as implementers. We have about 30 staff across the United States. About 5 of those are leaders. So we were honored to have, as many of you know the name Deb Russell, or Deb Bonanno, who also worked at Walgreens. She's a part of the JEC team. Carla Gowett, many of you know from efforts with Sephora and Walgreens as well. She's a part of the JEC team. But most of our folks are out in the field. They are either what we call embedded specialists or market specialists. And embedded specialists work directly in a company, in a corporation, helping those companies source and support talent with disabilities. And our market specialists then work in a geographic location like Charlotte or Los Angeles or Dallas, and work with 2 or 3 of our customers there, work with multiple customers, doing the same thing in building a talent pipeline with our company customers, and then building. Here, the key topic is helping to build an inclusive culture, right? And so if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the services, but that we do. So from a perspective of what JEC does with our corporate companies, and JEC works almost exclusively with essential businesses. There are other great companies that do but we work with companies where people go to work. So we work with distributors, manufacturers, retailers. We now have a large contract with Compass, the food service nationally. But we work with essential companies, and what we do, as the slide show on the far left, we help those companies build a talent pipeline of people with disabilities, right? We help them partner with vocational rehabilitation, community organizations, and that. We also know that many candidates with disabilities are outside of our traditional disability system. So we help companies recruit from other what we call non-traditional organizations, religious organizations, veterans organizations. And we also help companies recruit people with disabilities virtually through messaging on social media. And so one of the things we do is help companies build that pipeline of talent. On the bottom left, We help with training, right? We do disability awareness training, we do inclusive interview training, and we build training on with our company customers, with our company customers to help them, again, begin to look at creating that inclusive culture that supports people with disabilities. On the bottom right, we bring accommodations, we bring accessibility, we help our companies address those regulations, but most importantly is the topic of today's webinar, and what we do is really look at that company culture. And for us, it's looking at that culture site by site, right? In a distribution center, in a manufacturing plant. How do we systematically help them go on the journey of building a disability inclusive culture? Doesn't happen overnight. We're going to talk about how that happens, but that's one of the key things that we do at JAC, because I think Dave pointed out, and we've already hit on, we believe, people with disabilities will thrive, not just once they're onboarded in an accessible way, but once they come into a culture that supports difference, right? Supports it, and that's what we're hoping to build. So if you go to the next slide, just a little bit more about our model in terms of what we do. Oops. Are we able to go to the next slide? Perfect. And so again, these are some of our primary services. We went through most of that. Our building a talent pipeline. Again, one of the other pieces, as the third bullet point talks to you, is we'll hit on this, is we feel it's really important for a company to do disability inclusion well, to have buy-in from the top, right? Buy-in from the C-suite. But it's just as important to have that first level manager, right, bought into this initiative so that they can be a part of and contribute to the inclusive culture and understand what's in it for them as an initial manager, right? Because that's where the rubber hits the road, the employee with disability and the manager. So, and some of the benefits, right? We'll talk more about these, but these are the benefits that our companies see, right? They see the fact that there is support. They see loyalty, right? People with disabilities turn over way less. We know that from almost every study, right? There are opportunities for for incentives that are out there as well. Companies don't do it for that, but also can capture that. But the bottom line, especially in this labor market, is our customers continue to work with us because we are helping them build a loyal labor pool, right? A labor pool that's going to come back to them. And that is what is the amazing piece of what hiring people with disabilities. But to contribute to that retention, it's really important to build an inclusive culture. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And thanks for giving me a few minutes. I'll turn it over to my fellow panelists, and we'll get back into the inclusive culture piece as we move along. Pat, over to you.
Thanks, James. I appreciate that. So I will briefly introduce SPR and our efforts at developing a culture supportive of disability. And as Dave mentioned at the top, other segments within DEI. James hit on three, I think, critical points. One was support from the top. In SPR's case, our CEO drove this initial effort at supporting disability for many reasons, one of which is his oldest child manages challenges around developmental disabilities. James also referenced intentional efforts. I think that's critical, that disability isn't an also ran, as many of us who have worked in this field for years, including Dave and all of my fellow panel members, know disability. I used to occasionally review websites for corporate websites and high-profile companies to see whether they reference disability or ability or some nature of language that would infer a welcoming culture. And as I recall, on average, only 3 of 10 sites even reference disability. And I expect that's improved over time, but it still is a challenge for us to gain space and intent, as James noted, within corporate DEI efforts. So I reference 2 foundational initiatives within SPR. By the way, group SPR is a digital consulting firm. We provide strategy, custom software development and integration, as well as software testing and governance for our clients, most of whom are mid-market clients whose names aren't well known, but they provide a great client base for many companies within the digital space, including SPR, which is in our 50th year. And that's saying something for a small firm within this sector. And then the ITCAN is a meetup group that I founded along with several of my colleagues in 2008. I began work with SPR full-time in 2004. I had previously worked for SPR a second job, nights, 3 nights a week, preceding the Y2K window, where Dave's laughing. Every tech firm had their hands full worrying about how the world was going to change so dramatically as computers wouldn't accommodate from 99 to 00, but it proved that there weren't that many significant challenges globally. I'm not sure how much of that was the work that tech firms did in advance and how much was overstated within that sphere. But regardless, ITCAN is a meetup firm or group monthly that focuses or targets students, candidates, and professionals with disabilities with a tech interest. Next slide, please. And I'll speed up. I think these are 3 factors for SPR that really were key to our success at integrating disability into culture. As I noted, and James did, CEO or senior management is key. In our case, our CEO supported this integration, as well as created the first iteration of enablement. We changed that, shifted it over the years based on the market factors, but he had the premise in mind. I think you also need a measurable initiative. James spoke to intent. This is a reflection of intent. Either integrate KPIs within the disability hiring and efforts, or some other manner to measure, either quantitatively, preferably, or at least a strong qualitative measurement of success. And then, of course, evaluate that and improve upon it. And then engage the organization widely. James also referenced that frontline hiring managers or direct reports are critical. And I totally agree. Within enablement, where ultimately over a decade, we made upwards of 80 unique placements. Our key at the clients was the frontline managers had to buy in and support what enablement represented, and they needed to, thanks Molly, they needed to intentionally solicit resumes from people with disabilities. So next slide, please. SPR has also broadened our reach into other segments of the DEI landscape, including communities in need, focused on youth, and girls and women in tech. My role expanded in 2015 to encompass all of these groups. Next slide. I'll note just one from each of these groups where I think SPR has excelled. ITCAN has been going for 16 years now. We have transitioned, but our focus has always been to support network, knowledge, and opportunity. We have always had great speakers present on leading edge or bleeding edge, often topics within tech, including robotics, advanced prosthetics, VR, MR, AR, AI, machine learning, etc. As the landscape has changed within tech, SPR has evolved, and ITCAN has reflected those transitions and provided our members with leading edge information on technology that would bolster their opportunities to speak intelligently within the tech sector in supporting their careers. Year Up Chicago, some of you may know Year Up. It is a highly vetted support system and educational career model for young people of promise, mostly young people from challenged communities, many of color. SPR had for 7 years taken interns from Europe for 6 months, and we hired 5 of those interns within that window. In Girls and Women in Tech, we worked with Step Up, which is a women-led mentoring and academic career development program organization, very highly respected, and we really initiate or enjoy that effort. We continue to support the emphasis on gender parity within tech by everything SPR does, including several efforts, very intentional efforts to focus on women at SPR within executive or management roles. We, as I noted, continue to push for more parity within the tech sector. Okay, I know I've taken too much time, but I'm done.
That was terrific. Thank you, Pat, and thank you so much for your efforts. SPR is a wonderful organization, certainly leading the way, and James as well. So as Dave mentioned,
Carrie, I should have introduced you. James was kind enough to introduce me, so pardon me.
Not a problem. Thank you, Pat. By way of introduction, my name is Carrie Pesey. I am the Director of Talent and Operations at Autonomy Works. Prior to joining Autonomy Works, I spent most of my career in the vocational rehabilitation field, working with state agencies like WIOA, like the Division of Rehabilitation Services, special education cooperatives, and job placement agencies, and have really focused the second half of my career on creating sustainable systems and processes that enable people with autism and disabilities to be successful in the workforce. Here today to talk about Autonomy Works. Autonomy Works, it was founded back in 2013. We are a for-profit social enterprise that's headquartered here in the suburbs of Chicago. And our mission at Autonomy Works is to change the way the world views people with autism. We really strive to accomplish this mission in two ways. The first is by directly creating job opportunities for people with autism. And the second is by serving as a case study for other large organizations to replicate within their own corporations. Autonomy Works lives at the intersection of both a business problem and a social problem. And James alluded to the business problem that he sees as he's out talking with clients in the world. We see many of our clients come to Autonomy Works with this same challenge. They're looking to hire dedicated resources to join their team, and that's really difficult to do right now. Many companies are hiring individuals straight out of college or out of hiring program initiatives, and people want to do different tasks all the time. They start a job, they may do that job for 3, 4, 5 months, and then ultimately they say, I don't want to do this job anymore. You need to find something different for me to engage with, or I'm going to leave the organization. Companies are challenged with employee engagement. They're challenged with high turnover. This adds an incredible amount of cost and resource attention to the organization. And really, companies are coming to us and they're saying, we are looking for a dedicated workforce. We have jobs that need to be done accurately, that need to be done repetitively, that need to be really people that care about the work that they're doing and that they're committed to quality. And so Autonomy Works on the side of that. You can flip the screen there for me, please. Thank you. Also addresses the social dilemma, which is where people with autism enter into this picture. For those of you who don't know, autism is the fastest growing disability in America. Right now, Autism Speaks just released the statistic that we are at 1 in 36 children at the age of 8 diagnosed with autism, 500,000 people entering the workforce in the next decade. And I think it's important here to stop before we continue to talk about people with autism and the skills and talents that many of them possess, and is to acknowledge that autism is a spectrum. And there are individuals on the spectrum that require very little support to be successful in the workforce, in their personal lives, in their home lives. And then there are individuals on the spectrum that also require 24/7 support to sustain their activities of daily living and to be successful in their lives. So I do want to acknowledge that autism is a spectrum, and we are talking about a segment here of individuals that possess these skills that are valuable to the workforce, as many people with autism do. Many people with autism possess exceptional attention to detail, affinity for repetitive work, obsession for quality and accuracy, and have keen math, technical, and analytical skills. We also know that autism is the highest rate of unemployment out of any other disadvantaged group, currently looking at unemployment rates greater than 80%. And for many people, this is because of no good reason. We have seen at Autonomy Works that given the right culture, given the right supports, many people with autism can be successful in the workplace. And this is where the Autonomy Works solution comes into play. We marry that intersection of the business need, so customers and clients that are looking for a dedicated motivated workforce, people that want to master the tasks that they're working on, want to stay committed to that quality and exceptional level of excellence on the work that they're completing, and the talent that many people with autism can bring to the table. Next slide, please. We have three approaches in our work and the way that we approach our customers and clients. The first is in consulting. So sometimes people will come to us and in similar ways to James, they'll say, hey, we're interested in this initiative. And often we'll say, talk to James and he's the guy for you. But these are people that are interested in learning from what we've learned at Autonomy Works and how we've built a business based around individuals with autism and that culture. For the majority of our business, clients are interested in outsourcing work to Autonomy Works. So they say they've got this piece of work that either they're currently outsourcing, maybe they've considered for offshore, maybe automation candidates, but they're really looking for more of that human touch where they want individuals, again, committed to that level of excellence, committed to that level of mastery of their tasks, and they will outsource that work to Autonomy Works, and our team of associates will perform that work and complete that work daily for our clients at our office location in Downers Grove. And the third approach that Autonomy Works had is our on-site support. So this is where Autonomy Works will actually come on to our client site and build teams that are run and operated by Autonomy Works on site for our clients. So we'll talk through a few examples of each of those. First, three core service offerings. So when people ask us, what do you actually do? What is outsourcing? What are the types of work that you take from clients? These are three really great examples of the types of work that we do. Our work that is done in Downers Grove, all of our outsourcing work is computer-based. We focus on data management, big data. Everyone knows this is real. All of our clients care about big data. And lots of different sources, platforms, technologies that don't quite talk to each other yet. And our team is able to take data from varying different sources and consolidate that data into something that our client is able to do something with. Transaction processing, these are all of those tasks that need to get done. And as much as we wish these didn't exist in organizations, they most definitely still do. They are the backbone of how things get accomplished. There's not a ton of strategy behind these tasks, but they're essential to the operations and functions of the company on a daily basis. And the third example is quality assurance. So our team is exceptional at looking at those details, and we use Grainger as an example here. Grainger has 1.2 million SKUs of product information listed on their website. And it's really important to Grainger that when people go out to their website and they're looking at the specifics of a bolt or a tool or something that they want to purchase, that the details provided on their site are accurate. So we have an entire team of people here that are going through that data, validating, making sure that we have the best source for that, and really looking at those unstructured assets to make sure that they're meeting client requirements. So those are the three core service offerings on the business process outsourcing side of our business. And then an example of our on-site service. This is Suncast. Many of you may be familiar with them if you've ever visited Costco, Home Depot, those outdoor plastic sheds. Suncast was a great example of a company that was looking to really make a change in their both their business and their corporate culture. They came to Autonomy Works after seeing us being featured on CBS 60 Minutes last fall, and they said, "Hey, we're having a quality problem. We have temps coming in, we have staff that are changing over all the time, and we need a dedicated workforce that is willing to get the right pieces in these boxes every single time." And that's really important, right? You get home and you're building this beautiful shed in your backyard, and you come to the end of your building and you realize that you're short one package of nuts or bolts or screws, and you're pretty disappointed. Obviously, a high cost to the client there from a customer satisfaction. You've got to haul this thing back to Costco, or you've got to call the company. So Autonomy Works stepped in here, and we built a team of people that assemble these parts kits for our client Suncast on site. We have 25 employees on site right now, and we're growing to 40 in 2023. And we've really thought about corporate culture and how important that is inside an organization. And many of the points that both James and Pat alluded to have shown to be very, very important as we're looking at these on-site support case studies. So critical to Autonomy Works, we're not just focused on building a business, we're focused on building lives. We know that jobs are a critical part of someone's life. And once they are able to find a job and to have that confidence that they are able to positively contribute to the workforce, they can do all sorts of things that they never thought were possible. We've had individuals on our team get driver's license, go back to school, take on more difficult jobs, management roles, all of those different things that many people came into Autonomy Works for their first time saying they've never had a job, they never had experience, no one ever gave them the chance, and their confidence has just blossomed and they've been able to achieve all types of things that they even personally never thought were possible. Dave mentioned that Autonomy Works, we do have a team of more than 75, 80% of those people have autism or other disabilities. We have 16 clients, including those names like PepsiCo, Grainger, and Suncast. And our clients are reporting things like 90% reduction in errors, 30% reduction in costs, and increased employee engagement. So we know that this is working from the business side. We know that our clients are happy. They're thrilled with the work that our team is doing. And then we know that the impact is working for individuals as well. 95% of our associates are independently managing their own transportation. 100% of our team members have bank accounts, and associates report that Autonomy Works is the best place to work, a very supportive environment, and really value that the focus here is on their skills and talents and on what they can do, not on what they can't do. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, James, Pat, Carrie, for your insights there and for your thoughts on the topic today. So I do have a few questions for people, and I guess we're right here. So Carrie, hey, what gap? You talked a little bit in your presentation about the intersection between business and social needs. Can you talk a little bit more about the gap that you were trying to fill in that process of starting the company?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. That's exactly right. There really was a gap in the workforce from the business side. We still see today jobs that require attention to detail, jobs that need to be done right every single time, jobs that require mastery. This is a key component and something that I think we learned over the last couple of years is that our team really enjoys the pursuit of mastery. They want to come to work every day and be better at their job than they were the day before. That's really unique. I don't see that a ton with our neurotypical workforce. People say, I've done that. I'm moving on. I'm no longer interested in trying that again. Very different from a team who wants to master something, get deep into that, be better at it, understand the nuances. And there is a gap of people in the workforce that want to do that and clients who have that need on the business side. And then, as you mentioned, obviously there is a gap on the social side, 80% unemployment rate, 500,000 people entering the workforce. And most people with autism or disabilities find themselves in low-skilled jobs. They're wiping tables, they're stocking shelves, they're really doing work that's not taking advantage of many of the unique skills and talents that this exceptional workforce has to bring.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. James, one of the things I think that you do that's unique is that you work across lots of organizations. So you start to see themes of challenges and solutions. So could you talk a little bit about that as it relates to culture and what you're seeing consistently across companies?
Yeah, Dave, I think we talk a lot more, and we're learning lessons more and more, whether it's a middle-sized company or a middle-sized manufacturer that we work with that has 40 or 50 or 100 employees versus very large corporations that are multi-site. But I think especially at the site level, what we're learning is it's not enough to do training, right? Disability awareness training, disability inclusion training helps, right? It's a good start for building an inclusive culture. But and then we see a lot of our company partners doing a variety of different employee engagement surveys and utilizing the results. And those help too, right? But really where the rubber hits the road for us in inclusive culture is being able to mentor and create an open environment. What we are learning for companies that are new to the journey of inclusion especially is managers have questions, right? They have their own fears. They have their own biases, right? Somebody from the C-suite says, we're going to start hiring people with disabilities, and I'm a manager on the floor, and I've never really supervised people with disabilities. I'm worried I'm going to make a mistake. I'm concerned that people with disabilities aren't going to do the job. I'm concerned that I'm not going to be able to fire. I have all these fears and concerns, and I think in a training, it's not really part of that training is to give the information, but where it really we see the inclusive culture taking place is when managers feel free to ask questions, to express their concerns, to talk about their fears, right? And then I give that dose of, now I'm supervising somebody with a disability, and I see all those things Carrie just talked about, right? I see the effort, I see the passion, I see somebody coming to work every day. And now I'm kind of getting fired up because I'm able to ask my questions. I have this great employee. Maybe I need to make a few adjustments or accommodations, but that's okay now because I'm understanding, right? And it really is that journey. And once you start getting a couple managers excited, then the facility starts to get excited and there's a rally effect. But we really, as professionals, have to acknowledge that fear and stigma exists, and it exists site by site. And if we don't address it, we won't work towards a disability inclusive culture.
Great. Yeah, thanks, David. I think that's a really important point, is like, don't pretend it doesn't exist just because you don't see it every day. It is there, it's hidden, and people either are afraid to articulate it or don't know how to articulate it. And so you actually have to be active about pulling out and engaging people. Yeah. And Pat, I think that transitions us actually to the next question is, SBR's had a 20-25 year history of supporting employees with disabilities. Can you talk a little bit about how that's evolved over time and how they've learned and grown over that time?
Sure, Dave. Initially, as I noted, our CEO, Rob Filio, approached me to direct enablement. This was in 2003. We didn't launch until 2004, but we did a great deal of prep work in that interim year, mostly talent acquisition. We identified a lot of past professionals with disabilities who were either developers or business analysts, etc. But Rob had a vision for a two-pronged initiative. One was to compete with, as Carrie referenced, a lot of offshoring of kind of mainframe or mid-frame applications that were just being maintained. There's nothing sexy about the work. It was just come in and maintain them, etc. But a lot of this, we found we couldn't be competitive in that window with the Indian firms, mostly at that time. in terms of paying our candidates a living wage. Not wanting to drop the bar, of course, that would be self-defeating to push the mission forward of more full employment, competitive employment among qualified candidates, as James and Carrie Ann, you know well, Dave. But the second prong was an internship to hire initiative. And we found early on that clients, there was a great deal of scrutiny on intern programs during that window, and to have clients adopt a program for or to proactively engage the disability community within internships was for many of our clients, they just weren't ready for that culturally or process-wise. They had these unfounded fears of actions, etc., illness, all of the unfounded fears that we note. But as I noted early, we transitioned and learned that we could fill niches within the market. For example, Walters Kluwer, which is a European-owned firm that provides all of the digital tax forms. We found seasonal work that suited our candidate base nearly full time for 3 to 5 months a year at a very competitive base pay without benefits. But in our case, many of our candidates benefited from these roles because they could maintain their health insurance, their other government benefits that they relied on as they transitioned to full-time careers, or not, or just maintain that type of work year over year. We also found several clients in the Southeast Wisconsin area, like Johnson Controls, where we placed analysts and testers, etc. And I'd say a great Chicago client was Northern Trust, where before their help desk went international, we placed many help desk support workers within Chicago, probably a dozen or more over several years, several of whom stayed with Northern for years. I think autonomy works. We have identified niches, and at this stage, I'd say SPR disability culture is ingrained into SPR's DNA. So as our business developers are in front of clients, it's natural to approach our efforts at engaging the disability community. And I think that makes clients more comfortable. As you noted, Dave, SPR has such a rich history of organically as well as intentionally supporting disability culture and success.
Great. Yeah, thanks everybody. I think it's interesting that all of you talked about the need for the disability programs to be aligned with a business problem, that not trying to sort of force it into a place where it doesn't fit. And if you push one place and it doesn't fit, you do need to make sure that it's matched up against a business problem. But Pat, can you sort of continue and talk a little bit more about sort of how you can think about a company and assessing where it is and sort of its readiness to engage in a program like this?
Yeah, I think that, and I'll try to really be brief. I expect James does a ton of this strategically, but in my window with enablement, directing it, we learned there are several kind of telltale indicators of whether where a culture might lie on the continuum of disability engagement, whether they are a culture that supports employee wellness programs and initiatives, whether they are replete with ERGs or BRGs, what used to be referred to as affinity groups, supporting various segments of diversity, whether race, culture, gender, age, sexual orientation, or LGBTQ plus, veterans, disability, of course, etc. And I think at the early conversations, quality discussion around language, for example, if someone is stuck on either inappropriate or dated language around disability, I think that's a good indication that you are going to need to bring them along, and maybe methodically. I think that organizations can first and foremost join disability efforts or organizations, either boards, initiatives, like, for example, a walk, a run, an ad hoc effort by a organization within the nonprofit disability realm to expose yourself to disability early, and then you can engage more fully. But I think this is half art, half science. And again, I'm sure Carrie and James both have had many of these conversations, but I think others need to first use the website for a very high overview. If others have spoken of the company or organization in a flattering manner or otherwise, that may give you an early indicator. And then you need to engage and, as you said, Dave, assess where they're at. And it's not always clear, but I think ultimately you can create a small pilot initiative, as we did several times, to support their growth and integration of disability into culture.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Pat. That's I think the point that and James made this too about sort of being intentional, I think is very important. I do want to pause here before we go on to the next question and remind the audience that if you have questions, please post them in the chat. I want to make sure that we answer those. In lieu of that, we will continue with the other questions, but I am going to keep an eye on the chat to make sure that we do answer any of the audience questions that there are. So when you're talking to, so this is really, I think, a question for everybody. When you're talking to a company about hiring people with disabilities, how do you explain to them the importance of corporate culture in that process of making that successful? Carrie, you want to pop in first, then James?
Yeah, sure, Dave. This is such an important question, and one that is really can be difficult to put your finger on this when you're talking with clients about what is the true value of creating a culture with hiring people with disabilities, because it can take time, right? It's not an overnight. You don't hire your first person with a disability and see a culture change just happen like that. So when I'm talking to people about what this really looks like and what the value of this culture can do for their organization and what that might look like, it's really two things for me. One is it matters. Employees that see their corporations and organizations caring about disability hiring initiatives, we see that this really matters to employees. Everyone is 1 degree of separation away from someone with a disability, whether they personally identify as an individual with a disability, a child, a spouse, a neighbor, a friend, a person in their community. When they start to see their organization put this at the top of their values list, at the top of their priority list, people report that it really makes a difference, and they see that their company is not just talking about this initiative. They're not just putting words up on a website, but they're seeing this in their everyday working lives, and they place a lot of value on that. And then the second thing is when a culture focuses on aligning talents and capabilities, quite frankly, it's better for everyone. Some of that universal design, when people come to work and they're celebrated for the talents that they bring, the strengths that they're able to contribute to the workforce, when we're looking at what individuals with disabilities can do and what other individuals in the workplace can do, that creates a culture of empowerment. It creates a culture where individuals are able to go to other people in the organization and say, hey, I know you're really great at this. Can you help me? Or you're really great at this. I'm really great at this. We're able to support each other in these ways. So that alignment of capabilities to talents really makes an impact on an organization where individuals are able to lead with their strengths and everyone's able to be celebrated for what it is that they can contribute and not focused on what it is that they can't.
Yeah, and I mean, those are great, Dave. Those are great, Carrie. Those are great call outs. I just would add a couple things or to enhance what Carrie's saying. One of the things that we see and we talk to companies about, Carrie, that you pointed out, if you go in a room and in any company, a manufacturer, we work manufacturer distributor, and you ask this question, please raise your hand if you are a person with a disability or you know someone close to you, whether it's a friend or a family that has a disability. It's 100%, right? It's 99.9% of the room if people are being honest. Okay, so we start there, right? That we start there from a rally effect, right? Think about that person you know. Think about building a culture that would support that person. And we do really see then typically this rally effect of giving the culture something to be, to believe in, to be a part of, to, as you said, Carrie, to put up there. It really is some tangible things that this loose corporate culture world, right, can jump into. So the rally effect, right, is something that is really a piece. And Carrie, you mentioned when you develop the culture of strength-based culture, I think that is really an important thing as we think about disability, but diversity as a whole. But the other thing I love about companies that take this journey is not only do they start valuing strengths, they value difference, right? In other words, they value the fact that people coming in are thinking differently, or that when we train somebody, we don't all have to train everybody the same way, right? We don't have to train exactly the same way. We can customize training a bit, and that will actually work for a lot more personalities and learning styles and disabilities, right? So the two things I would add, and that we talk a lot about it in terms of intentional build of culture are, like you said, the strength-based model, but the rally effect of people rallying, and ultimately the valuing of difference, which makes the whole culture and the business stronger.
That's sounding great. Pat, anything to add to that?
I would only support what Carrie and James noted and say that during the first year of enablement, while we were trying to get exposure, we met with many senior execs, including multiple CEOs, and our CEO typically joined us on these presentations, and almost to a one, after we present, they would disclose either a personal disability or a family member or very dear friend's disability. And as James noted, there's really 1 degree of disability in the world. As we have noted, or has been noted, there are approaching 20% by some studies of disability globally. And that's over now well over 1 billion people on the planet. So it should be a far more comfortable dialogue.
Great. Yeah, James talked earlier about how complex it is for a lot of people to talk about it, which is really surprising given that almost everyone has that in their very big part of their personal life. But I'd like to turn, we have about 15 minutes left, so I actually want to turn in to this next question, and this might be our last question. Might have time for one more after this, but we've talked about the importance of having a culture of this, but all of you have worked with organizations to try to make this change happen. What are the biggest challenges you've seen, and then what do you do about that in order to try to drive change? James, why don't you kick us off here on this one?
Yeah, it's a great question. I referenced a little bit, I alluded to this. So the biggest challenge we still see is the fear and stigma of managers and leaders, right? Even leaders that kind of outwardly say they're committed. There's that most oftentimes that deep kind of worry that this isn't going to work, right? People aren't going to produce, we're not going to be able to fire, all those stigmas that are out there, right? And sometimes lately, especially as we have the opportunity to work with more and more companies, we see, I spend some times in cultures that are farther down the road and we're so past some of those fear and stigmas. But then when we go back to a new company, we're right back there in the beginning, right? And looking at, okay, I'm worried that this person's not going to produce, even though you've just given me all these statistics and all these things on why they will, right? That ultimately, right, I'm afraid this is going to be more work for me as a manager. It's going to, damage our business. And that's really what we often have to overcome. And to Carrie's earlier point, this is a journey, right? You're not going to overcome that fear and stigma by one awareness training or even one discussion, right? It has to be an ongoing piece where managers who have questions see the results of these great workers and also have an opportunity to ask questions and continue to talk about what their concerns are. For us, that's the largest challenge in culture building, is really that fear and stigma wall that exists behind and you can't kick it under the table. We have to get it out to really create. But the last thing I'll say is, when you see somebody who you first met, who you knew was, had a ton of fear at the best, maybe discriminatory at the worst, right? To all of a sudden become an advocate of the program, right? That's one of the funnest things in my job, is to watch people's evolution, business people's evolution through the journey. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks, James. Pat, you want to take this next?
Sure, I would simply echo James' point, specifically on fears. And I think an approach for others working in this field or trying to drive this mission is be creative, be flexible with clients. Don't dig yourself in and be intractable or angry, because it's easy to get angry with corporate America. We're still not close to where we need to be, but neither are women, neither are people of color, neither are the LGBTQ plus community. So we're part of a big group. So I'd suggest creativity, flexibility, and I'd go back to offer a pilot, a small initiative. You don't need to bite off a big integration or program initially. Offer, hey, can we identify one role you're struggling to fill. And let us source candidates with disabilities who are capable and who we feel can fill that role well. And offer that and understand that you really, in my experience, need to vet and cherry pick your highly qualified candidates, because even though it's unfair, an employer, if they have a bad experience from the outset, they will cut it off. And that's why you need to really cherry pick and vet critically on the front end. Over time, you'll get more latitude once you borne out success, but I'd say that.
Awesome. Carrie, thoughts?
Great. Thanks, Dave. Yes, I will definitely echo James and Pat on that. It's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. What is the challenge? Why is this so difficult for people? Why is this so difficult for corporations to change and for culture to really be different? What is the issue here? And James, I do think it stems back a lot to those stigmas and those fears that people are unwilling to really surface or bring to the table. We know that they're there. And our approach to this has been to talk about a culture of accountability. Many people with disabilities and people in general want to be held to the same expectations as anyone else, right? We teach and we talk about and we work really hard at Autonomy Works to have enough respect for people that we're going to hold them to the same level of accountability as anyone else. And our team members will talk about this. They'll say their entire lives they've spent in special education and they were treated differently. They were treated specially. No one ever believed in them enough. No one respected them enough to actually believe that they could be meeting the same expectations as others in the workforce. And I think if we really want to impact culture, we all need to be willing to create that culture of accountability and truly believe that individuals with disabilities are just as capable as anyone else. And we can do that by upholding a culture of accountability and really making sure that people are meeting the expectations that we put out.
Great, awesome. Thanks everybody, and thanks for all of your comments so far. I think you've really demonstrated the importance of sort of intentionality about culture, about the need to be actively looking at the status of the culture and making efforts to create the kind of culture that you want in an organization. We have just a few minutes left, so I'm just going to go actually to the next question, please, Molly. So we've got a bunch of people in the workforce profession on the line today. What should they do? What are the next steps, the actions that the people on this phone call should take in order to make some change into the culture of the organizations they work for and that they work with? Great, Pat, you want to start?
Sure. Briefly, Dave, I would suggest pardon me, from a client perspective, I'd suggest DEI training. I think James' company probably provides a lot of this. There are strong DEI firms that provide this training across all segments of diversity. I'd suggest that clients secure that training in terms of our audience. I would, as I noted, engage the disability community at a high level initially. If you've already done that, then move along the continuum and engage a prospective client and assess where they're at on the continuum. I'm not sure, Dave, this is fairly generic, so I'll let Carrie and James speak to it, and perhaps I'll have a clearer sense of what the audience should do.
I'm sorry, Carrie, you want to take this?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Many workforce development people are on the call today. So my advice there would be to make this an important topic. When you're talking to employers, when you're out there meeting with potential corporations that are looking to start disability initiatives, you need to be talking about culture. It's extremely important, and an organization that is not emphasizing the importance of culture and the significance of that within their workforce is probably not going to be very successful at integrating individuals with disabilities into the workplace. So please don't underestimate the importance of culture, and make sure that you're having those discussions with employers.
Great, James.
I would just add for the vocational rehab and workforce specialist here is pick your own pilot project. In other words, I know you oftentimes spend so much time with job seekers and doing you're managing your caseload and doing. I think one of the most important times of my life was when I was able to spend time in a business, right? Spend time in Walgreens to understand. I had been trained on job development and employer partnership, but it wasn't until I got to spend a little time in the business culture. So even if it's 1 hour a week or a half an hour with one of your workforce partners, right? Try to spend time going deeper, right? Going deeper with them on some of these things if you're able to kind of experience. And maybe you're doing that, then even go a little deeper than that, right? But I think part of the challenge here of helping with corporate culture is being able to spend time in a business understanding what their culture and what's important to them. And the more you can do that, the better you're going to be able to address this topic and use all the tools that we just talked about. So thank you.
Great, thanks. And I think with that, I think we'll wrap up the questions. James, Carrie, Pat, thank you very much for your participation. As Molly mentioned at the beginning, you will be receiving a follow-up survey in the next 24 hours. Please fill that out. We're doing 2 more webinars over the next 3 months, and would love your feedback to be able to make sure that those are as relevant and engaging as possible for everyone who's going to participate in them. So thank you to all the participants, and especially thank you to the panel members.
Yes, thank you, everyone. A link to the survey is in the chat box if you'd prefer to do it right now while it's fresh. Like David said, you'll get an email. And also, Sarah posted a link to the PowerPoint earlier, which contains information about our next webinars. So thanks, everyone. I'll close it out, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.